There's a question I keep returning to, not as a theory, but as something that quietly shapes people's lives. What if many of our most advanced systems struggle, not because they are poorly designed, but because they are designed around assumptions that don't consistently hold for real human beings? Many modern systems, particularly in work, law, and welfare, implicitly rely on an image of the average person, someone who is relatively stable, emotionally regulated, able to plan long term, and capable of sustained performance under pressure. This image is rarely stated outright, but it often appears in how rules are written, how expectations are set, and how deviation is interpreted. The further someone's life circumstances drift from this image, the more friction they tend to experience. Standards are necessary. Without them, systems collapse into arbitrariness. But problems arrive when standards quietly shift from being goals to being moral expectations. Struggle is tolerated briefly, difficulty is accepted conditionally. Ongoing instability, however, is often treated less as context and more as non-compliance. Systems are very effective at producing order. Order is predictable, measurable, and scalable. Justice, by contrast, requires context, history, interpretation. It requires time and a willingness to sit with ambiguity. Because ambiguity is costly, systems tend to minimize it wherever possible. We often describe formal systems as neutral. Rules apply equally. Procedures are standardized. But equality of application does not always result in equality of outcome. When context is excluded, neutrality can become indifference. Emotion is often treated with caution in environments where authority is exercised. Not because emotion disappears there, but because it's difficult to regulate. When emotions lack a formal language, it tends to surface indirectly through discretion, credibility judgments, and tone. A common fear is that understanding someone weakens accountability. But accountability without understanding risks becoming disproportionate. Consequences still matter. Context determines whether they are just. In many technical fields, failure is treated as data. It reveals mismatches between design assumptions and reality. In human systems, repeated failure is often moralized instead. The behavior is judged before the conditions are examined. Many behaviors that are penalized can also be understood as adaptations. Withdrawal, hyper-awareness, avoidance of confrontation. These responses are commonly associated with environments that were once unpredictable or unsafe. They are not proof of weakness, but of learning. Human social structures are inherently hierarchical. Some people navigate hierarchies well, others approach them cautiously. Avoiding conflict or status competition does not necessarily signal fragility. Sometimes it reflects an understanding of how easily escalation occurs. People who have witnessed severe conflict often relate to confrontation differently. Not because they lack courage, but because they have seen outcomes that others only imagine. Choosing restraint after that is not fear. It is memory. In performance-driven cultures, output often becomes a proxy for value. When this happens, rest appears suspicious, and recovery looks like delay. Systems continue to function while individuals quietly deplete. A humane system does not abandon standards. It assumes variability. It anticipates failure. It builds return paths rather than exits. Not because people are incapable, but because they are human. Justice is not the absence of consequences. It is the proportional alignment between responsibility, capacity, and context. Systems that forget humanity do not become strong. They become brittle. And brittle systems fail suddenly, often harming those least able to absorb the shock. We warn each other about people at the margins. But margins is where assumptions break down. Everyone carries something volatile. Memory, fear, love sharp enough to wound. No one is neutral. No one is untouched. A future worth building will not belong to the flawless. It will belong to those we made room for when they could not perform on command.